There you go. Can you hear us, Anthony? And can you see everything?
I hear you. I do not see you just yet.
Do you see the screen share though?
I see the screen share and I can still see you guys.
Okay. All right. So Angela is the expert on federal law. So, and the background of why we have guardians ad litem and CASAs and all that kind of stuff. So Angela, you want to tell them a little bit about the background really quickly? We're not gonna spend a lot of time on background, but just for a second.
Sure, Jerry. So the first, and he says that just because I do a training on these federal laws that would bore you guys to tears. But for purposes of tonight, know that the very kind of first federal law that like came about for this area of work was in 1974. So if you think about it, that might seem like a really, really long time to y'all, but it really is pretty,
like a really long time
if you think about it in the course of the life of our country, 1974 is really, really recent. But in the first federal law that we saw, it required that children who experienced abuse or neglect and who had a court proceeding would have a guardian ad litem appointed to them. So when we talk about tonight, what's a guardian ad litem? From the earliest stage, the federal law, and then required the states to have a law that said all youth in care would have a GAL who would investigate their situation and then come to court and make recommendations that are about the best interests. So for the next 30 minutes, we'll dig deep into what's a guardian ad litem, what does best interests mean?
Yeah.
But just know that it's a federal requirement and that the states do this. Oh, good. Animation.
Animation's always good. So you can have a guardian ad litem. That's that person who's there, who's advocating for best interests. And that can be a lawyer, or it can be somebody who's not a lawyer. And most of the time, if it's not a lawyer, it's going to be a CASA. So Georgia law says that that courts should prefer CASAs. That should be their preferred guardian ad litem. But they can also appoint a lawyer who's a guardian ad litem too. So they can have either one. You have an attorney guardian ad litem, you can have a CASA guardian ad litem, or you can have both in some cases. So you can have all kinds of guardians ad litem sometimes. So the big difference is that the attorney guardians ad litem are paid. They're being paid by the court, just like the child's lawyer. So if you have a case in foster care, you have a lawyer. And then the parents have lawyers and defects has a lawyer. Everybody has a lawyer. And and then the child also has a guardian ad litem who may be a lawyer who's also paid by the court, just like the other lawyers usually are. Or it can be a CASA, that lay guardian ad litem, and that person is always a volunteer. So CASAs are totally neutral, have no stake whatsoever, not even whether they get paid or not, which is a difference between them and the attorney guardians ad litem, because the attorney guardians ad litem are there. They're not there to make money because they're really not making much money, but they are getting paid for their time, whereas CASAs are totally volunteers. So Angela is Miss CASA USA, so she's going to tell us about what is a CASA.
This is so not our deal with this. Okay, so on that last slide, you saw that, and I'm glad Anthony seems amused. Maybe he hasn't seen us present too much to see our style, although I think we're in rare form even for us today. But
no,
Jerry has it on there that
I laughed because he said that, and I'm going back to the CASA Halloween costume party that y'all had. I think I had a few of them.
Were we at that?
It was superhero. It was a while ago. Y'all was dressed up as superheroes or something like that.
Okay, that was for a 5K, a superhero 5K.
I wasn't there.
But Anthony, you can give me a shirt that says Miss CASA, since that's what Jerry introduced me as.
Yeah.
But
Miss CASA USA.
That on this slide it says that the CASA equals GAL, and we're going to talk about the role of the GAL as we go forward and what that looks like. And while legally, you can switch the slides. And while legally the role of the GAL and the CASA are the same, I hope that those of you guys who had CASA volunteers appointed to your cases would say that having a CASA is a different experience. That like Jerry said, they're volunteers. That you maybe have a different or hopefully maybe a better relationship with your CASA volunteer than you have with your GAL because of the way that that CASA model is built. That a CASA is a volunteer, they're not getting paid. They are doing this because they found out about this program and really wanted to work with children and work with youth and advocate and help improve a child's experience in foster care. That a CASA volunteer only has 1 or 2 cases at a time, so that there's that time to spend that individualized attention and really get to know you and hopefully see you on a frequent basis and not just before a court hearings coming up. Let's see, I don't know. A lot of maybe some more out of court work is being done by a CASA than by your attorney GAL. CASAs tend to spend more time in schools and with your case managers and things, really advocating out of court just as much as in court. And we have another, you saw my screen with my picture come up on another computer. We're monitoring the chat too, so you guys can feel free to type in questions, or if you've had good experiences with your CASAs, we'll be sure to pass those along. So that's who a CASA is. The next slide talks about what is a CASA, what does a CASA not do? And I just wanted to kind of point these things out, that there are several things that a CASA can't do. And the first thing that a CASA volunteer would tell you they wish they could do that they're not allowed to is to drive you guys, right? The CASAs want to be able to take you places and do certain things, but our role as an advocate keeps it narrow. And some of that is to keep you guys safe. And some of that is also to make sure that youth have a similar experience, because not all CASAs would be able to do some of those things. So to make sure that everybody kind of has a consistent experience, that there are a few things that, you know, CASAs can't do. So be your placement, right? Buy you expensive things.
And those are things that no guardian ad litem should do anyway, right?
Yeah.
But CASA, specifically their program rules prohibit them from doing it. So just remember that a CASA is always a guardian ad litem. They're just a particular brand of guardian ad litem. So it's not a question of whether you have a GAL or a CASA. CASA is a GAL. They're just not attorneys. And some judges don't even realize that. So now you've got information that some judges don't even have. So you got one up on them.
Yeah. So CASA is to GAL like Coca-Cola is to soda, right? Or
soda.
Yeah, like the generic. Or like a brand. Kleenex to facial tissue.
So when I grew up, they were all called Coke. Any soft drink was a Coke. All right.
Well, you said we were branded GAL, so I was giving an example of the brand.
Okay. All right. You got it.
Like the name brand.
Yeah.
Not like Kroger brand.
All right. Not the generic brand. Right?
Yeah.
So, but the GAL is not the same thing as your lawyer, because I said you have a lawyer. If you have a foster care case, parents have a lawyer and defects has a lawyer, but your guardian ad litem is not your lawyer. Even if the guardian ad litem is a lawyer, they're not your lawyer. So the thing that a lawyer has to do is talk with the client, and when the client is a youth, it's in an age appropriate manner and try and discern what the client wants, and then they have to do that, even if they think it's really stupid. I used to represent criminal defendants once upon a time, and they often wanted to do really stupid things. And I could try to talk them out of it, because that was one of my jobs too. But if I couldn't talk them out of it in private, I had to go into court and do what they wanted me to do and ask for what they wanted me to ask for. And that was my job, to be their voice. And that's what your attorney's there for, to do what you want. They have a duty to try and, you know, if they think you're doing something really crazy, to talk you out of it. But in the end, you call the shots with your lawyer. The GAL is not supposed to do that. The GAL is supposed to look at the whole case and try to make a determination about what they think is really best. What you want is part of that. They're required to consider your wishes, but they don't have to follow your wishes. They may decide that what you want is nuts and they don't want to make that recommendation. Or they may totally agree with what you want, but think that there's some reason why it shouldn't happen right now. But at any rate, they should explain to you why they're going to make the recommendation they make, especially if it's different than what you want. But then you've always got your attorney there, you're in the driver's seat with the attorney, but you're not in the driver's seat with your GAL, even though your GAL may have more contact with you than your attorney does, especially if that GAL is a CASA. So that's a really big difference between the GAL, who's an attorney or a CASA, and your plain lawyer who's just there to represent you. Both of them are really important, but they do totally different things. I don't know how much time we should spend on this, but I really like diagrams, and so I made diagrams.
It's kind of dorky.
Yeah, it's kind of dorky, so I'm sort of a nerd. But so you want your court to be impartial. You don't want your court to make decisions before the court hears all the evidence.
Will you
right?
like explain what you mean by impartial?
Impartial, that means that they don't take a side. They don't walk into the courtroom. When I was a judge, I didn't walk into the courtroom having decided who should win before I heard the evidence, right? I had to hear all the evidence and then decide whose evidence was strongest, not who I liked best or who was nicest to me or anything like that. It was who had the best evidence. Even if I didn't like them, I had to rule in their favor if they had the best evidence, right? So I was totally impartial as between the parties. And the parties are not impartial, right? If I'm a parent's lawyer and DFACS wants to take my client's child away or has already taken my client's child away, I have a goal, which is probably to try to get that child placed back with my parent, again, or take direction from the parent about it. So I'm not impartial. And if I'm the lawyer for the child and the child says, I want to go home, well, then that's my job to try to get that child home again. So I'm going to do everything I do is going to be colored by that. I'm not going to be impartial. I'm going to be trying to win, trying to get an outcome that we want. But you take the GAL, and the GAL is supposed to advocate, but they're supposed to advocate for an impartial outcome. That's the outcome that the evidence requires, just like the judge in that sense. But they are required to be impartial in the sense that, they don't care at the outset who wins. What they want to do is get all the evidence and then make a determination about what should be the best outcome for the child. So the GAL is really kind of like the court in some ways and kind of like the lawyers for the parties in some ways too. One other big difference is between your GAL and your lawyer is everything you tell your lawyer. A lot of people already know this now, but everything you tell your lawyer is totally confidential. Right? Your lawyer can't tell anybody the stuff you tell them. There's a couple of limited circumstances. If you say, I'm on my way out the door right now to kill, John Smith, they can take steps to try to prevent you from killing John Smith. But mostly, they can't tell anybody what you tell them at all. Even they can't be subpoenaed. They can't be made to come to court and tell what you told them. What you tell them is totally confidential. They can't tell anybody, and they can never. You're the only one that can allow them to do that. That's not true of your guardian ad litem. Even if your guardian ad litem is a lawyer, your guardian ad litem is getting information from you and from the parents and from DFACS and from the people that provide services, counselors, psychologists, teachers,
foster
doctors,
parents,
foster parents. They're supposed to talk to everybody that has anything to do with this family whatsoever so they can get all the information. And then they're supposed to share all that information. So if I'm your guardian ad litem and I sit down and talk to you, I'm trying to understand what you want so I can go tell the judge and everybody else what you want. If I'm your lawyer, I can only tell what you tell me I can tell. So that's really different. You need to keep that in mind. The stuff you tell your guardian ad litem is not confidential. They're supposed to share that stuff. So if there's anything you don't want somebody to know, you shouldn't tell your guardian ad litem. You should tell that to your lawyer. Anything to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we had a follow-up question that says, so your CASA can't share any information.
No. Your CASA is the guardian ad litem, right? So they are, see that first one up there? They're required to share information. So the stuff you tell your CASA is not confidential because the only reason they're getting information is to share it. Now they can't share it with like their next door neighbors when they come over to have a drink in the afternoon. They're not supposed to share it with their husband or wife or kids. They can't say, hey, guess what the kid in my case told me today or anything like that. They're not supposed to tell anybody outside the court proceeding. In fact, it's illegal for them to share information they get during the course of their job as a guardian ad litem, whether they're a CASA or not. They can't share that with anybody outside the case, right? But they're supposed to share it with the lawyers for the parents, the lawyer for DFACS, the lawyer for the child, and ultimately with the judge, so that everybody knows where they're coming from. So they have to share that information. So the stuff you tell your CASA is not confidential.
Not your caregiver, though, not your foster parents, not your relatives that you might stay with or your group home workers.
Yeah, they can only tell,
Yeah.
like the lawyers in the case and the judge in the case. They can't tell like the people that work on your case, like Angela said, like foster parents. They can't tell those people. They can only tell the parties to the case, the people that are represented by lawyers and are working in the case. That's all they can tell.
So, and just another clarifying question: it is the attorney that cannot share any information.
Right,
Correct?
your attorney. So again, that's why we made that distinction a second ago. You can have a GAL who is an attorney, but that person's not your attorney. So the things you tell an attorney GAL or a CASA GAL are not confidential. It's only confidential if you tell it to your attorney, okay, the one who's there to represent you. Now, there's a really complex thing that Angela threw in here to make things really complex. So, Angela.
No. But okay, I didn't. This is like just like when we did this at the summit, the same exact issue. Don't make me do this. So that this slide and the question that's posed on this slide, I mean, attorneys and people that we work with build their whole careers around like answering like this question because it's complicated and it's kind of a gray area in the sense that lawyers are bound by a bunch of ethical rules called the rules of professional conduct. And lawyers are required to, like Jerry said, unless there's an extreme circumstance, are required to keep the things that their clients say, even child clients, in confidence. So the question becomes, when the lawyers, both the advocate as the GAL and the lawyer, are they supposed to share that information or not? And what's supposed to happen is if the things that you want to see happen in your case and your kind of secret information, I guess, or the information that you want held in confidence is different from what needs to be shared with the judge, or is then the attorney who's functioning as GAL should say, wait, I now have to function solely as my client's lawyer, and I'm going to keep this information in confidence and be driven and do my role according what the child or youth wants me to represent, and that a separate guardian ad litem is appointed to kind of share information and work on the case with the kind of public stuff.
Yeah, because across the state, I think probably the majority of courts, even if there's a CASA on the case, the majority of courts make the child's attorney to also be the child's guardian ad litem. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince people that this is a bad idea because of the thing we just talked about. If I'm your lawyer and I'm also appointed as your guardian ad litem, what do I tell you when we go into a room to have a conversation about your case? Do I tell you that I can't tell anybody? Or do I tell you that I have to tell everybody? Which is, and nobody can answer that question really, because that person has conflicting jobs if they're both your lawyer and your guardian ad litem. So what we're trying to get to a situation where the person who's appointed to be your lawyer is just your lawyer and is never also your guardian ad litem. And so then you may have a lawyer who's your guardian ad litem, but that's not your lawyer. Or you may have a CASA who's your guardian ad litem, but it's not your lawyer, right? Your lawyer is only going to represent you. So if you're still in a case where you have a foster care case, or you know people who do, and they have a lawyer who's also their guardian ad litem, you need to have them ask that question. You know, is the stuff I tell you confidential or not? And the answer is, you know, who knows? It's a bad thing, I think, to have the same person be your lawyer and your guardian ad litem, and we're trying to convince people of that fact. So, because you need to know when you talk to somebody clearly what their job is. You know, is this person's job to share my information or not to share my information? And you don't know that if they use the same person as your lawyer and your GAL. They do that to save money, basically, but it's allowed by our law, but it's a bad idea.
Yeah, they do it to save money. And then I don't know where you guys are from, but in some of like the small towns in Georgia, there's just not really a lot of lawyers out there. So sometimes they'll have them combine roles just because there's not enough lawyers in the town.
Or not enough CASAs.
Yeah, or not enough CASAs. Yeah.
Usually if there's enough CASAs, they don't have to worry about that problem. They can just appoint a lawyer to represent the youth and have the CASA be the guardian ad litem. They don't have to worry about that dual role. But you know, if they don't have enough CASAs, or enough lawyers to go around, then they may be in trouble and they may have to appoint the same person to do both jobs.
And around the state, there are about half or a little bit more of the children and youth who are currently in foster care have a CASA volunteer. So everybody has a GAL. They're required to by law. Remember, that's how we started this out by saying, but only about half of the kids in care have a CASA serving in that role.
And just to answer your question, I think, so I see some people I see a group home from Region 1 that I noticed, Region 4, I see a Macon, Albany, and I think I see a Savannah or what have you. So I know a few of them by name. So some of them are group homes that are listening in. Just FYI. If you're on and especially those that are on Facebook, type which region that you're in, which DFAS region that you're in, and to have better understanding.
Yeah. Okay, so the next part is something's supposed to happen now.
Yeah, because
Whoops.
your slides and the animation.
Yeah, well, whatever. So I like to have animation in my slides because it's just cool. And Angela doesn't like animated
No,
slides.
because it just ends up looking blank when you're looking at it.
After the animation goes.
Yeah, and then it's like, what were we talking about?
That's like saying at the end of the film, we watched this film and now it's just blank. So they shouldn't have a film, right?
Why don't you tell them about what we mean by best interests?
Okay.
And know what we
So-
mean by what the role of the GAL.
So we've talked about GALs. You've got your lawyer who represents you, and then you have a GAL who may be a lawyer or maybe a CASA. It's not your lawyer, but it's a GAL who's a lawyer or a CASA. So whether it's a lawyer or a CASA, the GAL is there to argue for what seems to them to be in your best interest. Okay. It's not just a matter of them thinking they know better than you do what's good for you. As we're going to talk about in a minute, they have the law sets forth a set of criteria they have to use, a sort of checklist they're supposed to go down when they make a determination about what's in your best interest. So it's supposed to be based on law and on the facts of the case. And it's not supposed to be based on whatever their gut feeling is about what's best for you, because we don't care what their gut feeling is about what's best for you. We care about what your gut feeling is about what's best for you, but not the GAL. We want them to use something more objective, right? We want them to basically do a kind of test to determine what's in your best interest. And that's going to be those factors
that you're going to talk
are-
about much later.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about those best interest factors in a minute. So what does the guardian ad litem have to do? So the court can't tell the guardian ad litem, look, I don't want you to do all this stuff. If there's a guardian ad litem appointed in your case, which there has to be, they have to do all this stuff. So first, they have to maintain regular in-person contact with the child and meet with and interview the child prior to court. Look, the law says child. So legally, a child is anybody from 0 to 18. So sorry if you don't like being called a child. You can substitute youth. When you hear me say the word child, just stop up your ears and say youth if you want to, but this is what's in the law. Okay, so they're supposed to maintain regular in-person contact with the child. Across the state, CASAs do a really good job of that. Lawyer GALs, not so much. They're supposed to find out the child's needs, circumstances, and views. That's it. Find out what you need, what you want, what's going on with you, what's happening. They're supposed to look at all the facts and circumstances surrounding your case, so that they know what's going on in your case. So a really important thing to do. They're supposed to talk with your lawyer, the one who's there to represent you, see if there's any way they can help each other. And they got to talk with everybody who has anything to do with your case, healthcare, mental health, any professionals involved in the case. They're supposed to talk to the school, the doctors, the psychologists, everything, because they're trying to get all the information. They're trying to get more information than anybody else probably has. Then they're supposed to review the court records and go to all the hearings too.
So just on those 5 through 7, just to reiterate what we said before, while this says communicate with the folks in the case and review the records, that while the GAL is gathering this information from these folks, your doctors, your counselors, your teachers, these are the folks that the CASA is not, or the GAL is not sharing the information back out with.
Right.
They're just gathering that information to tell the folks who are involved in the court hearing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, just to clarify, that these numbered items are all listed out in like the Georgia code.
Yeah,
So
this is the law.
just, this is the law about what your GAL, whether a lawyer or a CASA, is required to do on your behalf.
So they're also supposed to advocate for you to have timely court hearings. So if cases are not coming to court enough, they're supposed to be calling up, the judge, basically not calling the judge, but contacting the court and making arrangements to have a hearing. They're supposed to protect your cultural needs. They're supposed to talk to you before any change in placement. This doesn't happen across the state because DFACS is still changing placements without providing advance notice way too frequently. But the law says they're supposed to provide advance notice. And when the GAL gets that notice, then that GAL, whether it's a lawyer or a CASA, is supposed to talk to you first and then talk to you after the change in placement to see how things are going.
Although sometimes they don't know. I mean, like
Yeah,
you're saying,
yeah.
they just don't know
Sometimes the
until
CASA
after
doesn't
you're
find
moved.
out until they go to
Yeah.
court and they're like, hey, I couldn't find the child. It's
And
like,
we're
well,
really
it's 'cause we moved
trying to
them.
work on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're working on that across the state. So they're supposed to attend any panel reviews. They're supposed to tell the court how DFACS is doing on its job of providing services and how you, the parents, anybody else that's under that court order is doing in complying with all those things. So basically the court makes orders and the GAL is supposed to sort of keep the court informed of how everybody's doing, not just take the party's word for it, but the GAL is supposed to be kind of standing outside watching. The GAL is kind of like the referee, So one side may say that was a foul. The other side may say, no foul. The referee is supposed to be in a position where he can see better than all the other people because he's got more information than they've got. And so can make the call more objectively. So the GAL is kind of like the referee and then informing the court whether everybody's behaving the way they're supposed to or not. It's supposed to look at the compliance with the case plan and with the court orders. So the court knows from the GAL how everybody's doing.
Now, what does best interest of the child mean?
Angela is the expert on best interest
No,
factors.
I don't. Okay, so this list, just like the other list of numbered things we had, is what is listed in the code, because in order for we talked about in the beginning that the role of the GAL is to make a recommendation about what's in the best interest, right? And in the last 5 or 6 years, Georgia's done a pretty good job of since we've had it in our new law, giving some factors about what it looks like, about what's in somebody's best interest. And both the court is required to look at the list of best interest factors and making their findings about your case. And the GAL or the CASA or the attorney is supposed to look at these best interest factors with regards to before making their recommendation. And it's really because it's supposed to help filter the information, all that information that the GAL has gathered, talking to your teachers, talking to your foster parents, your parents, your relatives, everybody, right? All that information that's been gathered, and in making that recommendation about what's in the best interest, what the GAL thinks the court should recommend, it helps filter that and make sure that the CASA or GAL's own personal opinion is kind of taken out of that and make it more objective. That's what we talked about when we talked about impartial, and that GAL being like the judge function, weighing the evidence. Those factors are really like a filter. So I don't know what you want to say about that.
Yeah, just to make it so that the GAL is not just coming in and saying, this is what I think ought to happen. I mean, we get anybody off the street who can tell us what they think ought to happen. But GALs have to receive specific training before they become GALs. And they're supposed to have some expertise at looking at the facts of the case through the lenses kind of those best interest factors so that they're seeing it more professionally, right? Because we don't care about what their private opinion is. What we want to know is how do those factors affect the evidence they've gathered? And so they're supposed to apply those factors, which may mean that sometimes they make recommendations that they wouldn't like to make maybe. So like when I was a judge, I mean, I was bound by what the evidence did, which meant that sometimes I had to enter rulings that I didn't like to enter. I just had to enter rulings that I didn't like to enter because the evidence demanded them. And we hope that the GAL will do the same thing with the best interest factors, that even if they, don't really think the child should go home, if the best interest factors demand it, they're going to say, Judge, the best thing for this child is to go home. Or the best thing is to stay in care, or the best thing is to go be adopted, or whatever it is. We just hope that they're making that determination based on those best interest factors, not on just what they want to see happen in the case.
Yeah, I was trying to think of an example, but I couldn't really, that was not like a case specific kind of example. But I was thinking about when I was in school and we had to write opinion essays. And like one of them was about like whether or not youth should wear uniforms to school, right? And it's one of those things that nobody wants to wear a uniform perhaps, right? But if you actually looked at all the pros and cons, it might be in a student's best interest to wear a uniform. So it's that kind of like concept about what you want versus what's in best interest.
Yeah. So again, what you want, that's your lawyer's job to determine that and argue it to the court. What's in your best interest, that's the GAL's job. But again, one of the important things that goes into that best interest thing is what your wishes are too. So the GAL's, everybody's supposed to be at knowing what your wishes are before they make these recommendations to the court. So they're related, but they're different. So what about best interests and parents' rights? Because a lot of times we hear people say, the parents' rights are getting in the way of a child's best interests, or the child's best interests are harming the parents' rights. But they really don't have anything to do with each other, actually, because your rights guarantee, or a parent's rights, state's rights, anybody's rights in terms of a court hearing guarantee them a safe and fair process, right? Where everybody's heard and where only admissible evidence comes in that's been reliable, all that kind of stuff. That's what your rights guarantee, a fair due process. So the rights don't guarantee you any outcome. Your rights guarantee you, if you get charged with a speeding violation, for instance, you get a speeding ticket, you have a right to have a trial with regard to your speeding ticket if you want one. And if you do that, you have a right to have a fair trial and a speedy trial, and you have all kinds of rights, but you don't have a right to be found not guilty of speeding. And the state doesn't have a right to have you found guilty either. That's what's the best outcome, right? So that's determined by the evidence. So your rights get you the fair proceeding, they get your parents the fair proceedings, they get the state fair proceeding, everybody has a fair proceeding, but the best interest is about what's the best outcome. So that GAL is really looking to the end and saying, here's what the best outcome is. Now, the only way that GAL can do that, the court or the GAL can guarantee that they're getting the best outcome, is if they have a fair proceeding, right? Where everything's laid out on the table and they're only considering good, reliable evidence. You want the court to make its decision based on the evidence that comes before the court in the hearing and not based on what somebody says to the court at the grocery store, for instance. That would be a violation of that fair process, and it wouldn't guarantee a good outcome. But we hope that when you do have fair processes and procedures, that everybody has the best outcome in the end, the most reliable outcome anyway, even if it's not the outcome they want. So anything on that, Angela? So this is basically just what we just talked about, that it's kind of a misunderstanding to think about rights versus best interests, because they're really not the same thing. They run along parallel to one another. The rights guarantee you that fair process, and the best interest, we hope, guarantees the best outcome. And when you take all those things together, we hope you have a really good proceeding that's reliable and has reliable outcomes. And it's not just a bunch of people coming in and just making things up as they go along, which is something we really want to avoid in legal proceedings. So this is Angela's wrap up. What happens if all the stuff that we're saying about what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening isn't really your experience, or wasn't really your experience? What happens then?
Well, I was, and I hope some of you guys, I know we've heard from some attendees that can't hear, so I hope that our audio hasn't gone out like across the board, but hopefully you can catch it from the slides or watch watch the
Yeah,
recording.
you should be able to hear because we have this really cool microphone.
Mhm.
It's not as big as Anthony's microphone, but it's still a really cool microphone.
Yeah, we were commenting about your microphone when we started, Anthony, that you look like you were like in a sound booth or something with your
Yeah.
headphones. So I really wanted to end by like this, under recognizing that what we're talking about is what the law says should be happening, and understanding that sometimes what the law says isn't exactly what ends up looking like in practice or what your experience looks like. And some of us build our whole careers in trying to make sure that the law and what's actually happening in your cases are the same, right? And then like
Yeah.
what the law says is actually what's happening. If it's a CASA specific issue, that you'll be able to always, once Anthony gets my shirt made, you'll be able to find me, and the last slide will have our email addresses, right? That I can help navigate what's going on. If you don't have a CASA volunteer and you're like, man, they sound pretty cool, I wish I could get one. Maybe we can help see if that appointment can be made. But on a larger scale, some of the things that we've been doing is we like kind of wrote a manual for judges and lawyers. Some of these things that we said like are
We didn't
confusing.
kind of write
Yeah,
one.
we
wrote
did.
one.
Yeah, we did. We
It took like a year and a half.
It took a long time, but to help explain to judges and lawyers and CASAs, some of these things that we explained were the differences and just the subtle differences between the roles and some of those conflicts that we talked about. So helping for some clarity for that and answer questions so that practice looks the same from one county to another county to another county. We do trainings like this for you guys, and we do them for foster parents and judges and attorneys and CASAs and everybody. Sometimes we bring all of those folks together in what we call MD Canny, a multidisciplinary. So for all the people who come from different roles and wear different hats, all come together and hear the information at the same time. So we try to do trainings to change practice. The next one on there is stakeholder meetings, and that's where again, those folks that are defects and lawyers and CASAs and the judge and the court folks all kind of come together and talk about not individual cases at all, but just talk about issues that are going on in the system and how to improve practice for the court and how to improve the hearings and how to improve experiences in care. So when we talk about those things, and sometimes conversations will just have small groups with the judge or a few folks who have questions. But certainly if this is an area of interest to you in terms of legal representation, because you had a really great experience, because you had a really not so great experience, and want to help drive those conversations in your court systems, to tell your lawyer like, hey, I would love to have opportunity to get in front of the judge or some of the folks that we see in court and really talk about this and how we can improve legal representation for all my brothers and sisters in care who are coming up behind me. And, Anthony can help you with that. Jerry and I can help you with that. Jamaica was saying earlier, know your ILS, your independent living specialist can help you with that. I know some of you guys were here from Region 1, and you have Dershawn, who's fantastic, who can help you with these things. So I think we have 1 minute to go to 6:30, but really hope that this helped answer your questions about what a GAL is and what your advocates are doing or should be doing. And we're happy to stay on and answer any questions and anything else you'd like us to cover, Anthony.
I think thank you. That was amazing. I still like hearing every time I pick up something new. So so I thank you for being willing to share this information. And you said that you'll get me the slides, and I'll try to make sure that the team gets them, and I'll probably be following up with you so I can know how to teach it to some of our young leaders, so they're aware of the information and things like that.
Angela will have to send them to you because I will forget. As soon as I walk out of the room, I'll forget.
Oh no, you're like me. I have to. I tell people to email me all the time. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Email me to remind me to do that for you,
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah, and
So
that first email, that's only just like the warning shot. So go
Yeah.
ahead and be ready for the follow-up email. to make sure I really knew you seriously wanted it.
Yeah. So anyway, it's better if Angela will send them to you. She has them.
Awesome. But definitely thank you for teaching us and giving us this training. And I know you had to kind of trim it down for this time frame, but we really appreciate it. And you said that, oh yeah, your information is up there. So if they have any questions directly for you, you can go ahead and email them. As always, thank you all for joining on this third Tuesday. We hope that you stay safe, have a happy holidays. Make sure that you're wearing your mask. 2021 is going to be so much better. We're looking forward to doing some in-person things later on in the year. For those of you who are not signed up yet, please sign up for our Spotify, sign up for our YouTube. That's where a lot of our content is going, for those of you who want those, as well as some other content that we don't do live. So I'll put that in the chat. Wait, my wireless keyboard died on me. Other than that, I don't have anything. Jamaica, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything. That's it.
Awesome. Have a happy new year. I don't know, all of our events, I can't shout out any other events because we just did our karaoke and we did a national movie night already. So I don't have any more events for this year. So that's good.
You can relax now.
Karaoke.
You can relax now.
You can invite
Well,
me to come out and Jerry to karaoke, Anthony. So
we're gonna do another one.
Okay.
We have our podcast on Thursday. Yeah, make sure that you're signed up for that one. That's gonna be the last one for the year. So
All right. Thanks.
awesome. Thank you all. Everybody have be safe.
All right.
All right.
Happy holidays, everybody.